Welcome everybody, this is Alan with Daily Armor of God. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well. This is Reading the Bible in 123 days. We're on day 49. And today we're starting 2nd Chronicles. We're going to read chapters 1 through 9. 2nd Chronicles, and for the most part, I believe it's about Solomon's journey. And the temple. Yep, so it's Solomon's time now. So the last couple days was about David. Here we are about Solomon. Alright, so 2nd Chronicles chapter 1 verse 1. And Solomon, the son of David, was strengthened in his kingdom, and Yahweh his God was with him, and magnified him exceedingly. Then Solomon spake unto all Israel, and to the captains of thousands, and of hundreds, and of the judges, and to every governor in all Israel, the chief of the fathers. The Solomon and all the congregation with him went to the high place that was at Gibeon, for there was the tabernacle of the congregation of God, which Moses the servant of Yahweh had made in the wilderness. But the ark of God had David brought up from Kirjath-jearim to the place which David had prepared for it, for he had pitched a tent for it at Jerusalem. Moreover, the brassen altar that Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, had made, he put before the tabernacle of Yahweh, and Solomon and the congregation sought unto it. And Solomon went up thither to the brassen altar before Yahweh, which was at the tabernacle of the congregation, and offered 1,000 burnt offerings upon it. And that night did God appear unto Solomon, and said unto him, Ask what I shall give thee. And Solomon said unto God, Thou hast showed great mercy unto David my father, and hast made me to reign in his stead. Now, O Yahweh God, let thy promise unto David my father be established, for thou hast made me king over a people like the dust of the earth in multitude. Give me now wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come in before this people. For who can judge this thy people, that is so great? And God said to Solomon, Because this was in thine heart, and thou hast not asked riches, wealth, or honor, nor the life of thine enemies, neither yet hast thou asked a long life, but hast asked wisdom and knowledge for thyself, that thou mayest judge my people, over whom I have made thee king. Wisdom and knowledge is granted unto thee, and I will give thee riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings have had that have been before thee, neither shall there any after thee have the like. Then Solomon came from his journey to the high place that was at Gibeon to Jerusalem, from before the tabernacle of the congregation, and reigned over Israel. And Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, which he placed in the chariot cities, and with the king at Jerusalem. And the king made silver and gold at Jerusalem, as plenteous as stones, and cedar trees made he, as the sycamore trees that are in the vale, for abundance. And Solomon had horses brought out of Egypt, and linen yarn, and king's merchants received linen yarn at a price. And they fetched up and brought forth out Egypt a chariot for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 150. So brought they out horses for all the kings of the Hittites, and for the kings of Syria by their means. You know what's crazy is we see this come to pass when God says, Nor will there ever be a king with as much abundance and wisdom. That's so true. From here on out, after Solomon, from there on out, I should say, we see nothing but decline. And occasionally there's some good kings, but they're not like fully into it. And then we see one very last good king before they're sent away into Babylon. Before the couple bad kings. And he was fully in it with all his heart, but besides a few good kings here and there, it's nothing but decline. So it's sad. Sad reading what we're reading, knowing what we know about how Solomon had so much wealth and peace and power and grand things and so much stuff, and then we see throughout kings that they get raided and looted and treasures taken away, and buildings destroyed, and it's just so sad to see. Here's 2 Chronicles 2, verse 1. Solomon determined to build a house for the name of Yahweh, and a house for his kingdom. And Solomon told out 70,000 men to bear burdens, and 80,000 to hew in the mountain, and 3,600 to oversee them. And Solomon sent to Hiram the king of Tyre, saying, As thou didst deal with David my father, and didst send him cedars to build him a house to dwell therein, even so deal with me. Behold, I build a house to the name of Yahweh my God, to dedicate it to him, and to burn before him sweet incense, and for the continual showbread, and for the burnt offerings morning and evening, on the Sabbaths, and on the new moons, and on the solemn feast of Yahweh our God. This is an ordinance forever to Israel. The house which I build is great, for great is our God above all gods. But who is able to build him a house, seeing the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain him? Who am I then that I should build him a house, save only to burn sacrifice before him? Send me thou therefore man, cunning to work in gold and silver and brass and iron, and in purple and crimson and blue, and that can skill to grave with cunning men that are with me in Judah and in Jerusalem, whom David my father did provide. Send me also cedar trees, fir trees, algum trees, out of Lebanon, for I know that thy servants can skill to cut timber in Lebanon. And behold, my servants shall be with thy servants, even to prepare me timber in abundance, for the house which I am about to build shall be wonderful, great. And behold, I will give to thy servants, the hewers that cut timber, 20,000 measures of beaten wheat, 20,000 measures of barley, 20,000 baths of wine, and 20,000 baths of oil. Then Hiram the king of Tyre answered in writing, which he sent to Solomon, Because Yahweh hath loved his people, he hath made thee king over them. Hiram said moreover, Blessed be Yahweh God of Israel, that made heaven and earth, who hath given David the king a wise son, endued with prudence and understanding, that might build a house for Yahweh, and a house for his kingdom. And I have sent a cunning man, endued with understanding, of Hiram my father's, the son of a woman of the daughters of Dan, and his father was a man of Tyre, skillful to work in gold, and in silver, and in brass, and iron, and stone, and in timber, and purple, and blue, and in fine linen, and in crimson, also to grave any manner of graving, and to find out every device which shall be put to him with thy cunning men, and with the cunning men of my lord David thy father. Now therefore the wheat, and the barley, and the oil, and the wine, which my lord hath spoken of, let him send unto his servants, and we will cut his wood out of Lebanon, as much as thou shalt need, and we will bring it thee in floats by sea to Joppa, and thou shalt carry it up to Jerusalem. And Solomon numbered all the strangers that were in the land of Israel, after the numbering wherewith David his father had numbered them, and they were found 150,000, 3,600. And he set 70,000 of them to be bearers of burdens, and 4,000 to be hewers in the mountain, and 3,600 overseers to set the people at work. 2 Chronicles 3. Then Solomon began to build the house of Yahweh at Jerusalem and Mount Moriah, where Yahweh appeared unto David his father in the place that David had prepared in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. He began to build in the 2nd day of the 2nd month, in the 4th year of his reign. Now these are the things wherein Solomon was instructed for the building of the house of God. The length by cubits after the first measure was 80 cubits, and the breadth 20 cubits. And the porch that was in the front of the house, the length of it was according to the breadth of the house, 20 cubits, and the height was 120, and he overlaid it with pure gold. The greater house he sealed with fir trees, which he overlaid with fine gold, and had set thereon palm trees and chains. And he garnished the house with precious stones for a beauty, and the gold was gold of Parvaim. And he overlaid also the house, the beams, and the posts, and the walls thereof, and the doors thereof, with gold, and graved cherubims on the walls. And he made the most holy house, the length thereof was according to the breadth of the house, 20 cubits, and the breadth thereof 20 cubits. And he overlaid it with fine gold, amounting to 600 talents. The weight of the nails was 50 shekels of gold, and he overlaid the upper chambers with gold. And in the most holy house he made 2 cherubims of image work, and overlaid them with gold. And the wings of the cherubims were 20 cubits long. One wing of the one cherub was 5 cubits, reaching to the wall of the house, and the other wing was likewise 5 cubits, reaching to the wing of the other cherub. And one wing of the other cherub was 5 cubits, reaching to the wall of the house, and the other wing was 5 cubits also, joining to the wing of the other cherub. The wings of these cherubims spread themselves forth 20 cubits, and they stood on their feet, and their faces were inward. And he made the veil of blue and purple and crimson, and of fine linen, and wrought cherubims thereon. And he made before the house 2 pillars of 35 cubits high, and the chapiter that was on top of each of them was 5 cubits. And he made chains as in the oracle, and put them on the heads of the pillars, and made 100 pomegranates, and put them on the chains. And he reared up the pillars before the temple, one on the right hand and the other on the left, and called the name of that on the right hand Jachin, the name of that on the left Boaz. 2 Chronicles 4. Moreover, he made an altar of brass, 20 cubits the length thereof, and 20 cubits the breadth thereof, and 10 cubits the height thereof. And he made a molten sea of 10 cubits from brim to brim, round in compass, and 5 cubits the height thereof, and a line of 30 cubits did compass it round about. Under it was the similitude of oxen, which did compass it round about, 10 in a cubit, compassing the sea round about. 2 rows of oxen were cast when it was cast, and it stood upon 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, 3 looking toward the west, 3 looking toward the south, 3 looking toward the east. And the sea was set above upon them, and all their hinder parts were inward. And the thickness of it was a handbreadth, and the brim of it was like the work of a brim of a cup, with flowers of lilies, and had received and held 3,000 baths. He also made 10 lavers, and put 5 on the right hand, 5 on the left, to wash in them. Such things as they offered for the burnt offering they washed in them, but the sea was for the priests to wash in. He made 10 candlesticks of gold according to their form, and set them in the temple, 5 on the right hand and 5 on the left. He made also 10 tables, and placed them in the temple, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left. And he made 100 basins of gold. Furthermore, he made the court of the priests, and the great court, and the doors of the court, and overlaid the doors of them with brass. And he set the sea on the right side of the east, and over against the south. And Hiram made pots, and the shovels, and the basins, and Hiram finished the work that he was to make for King Solomon for the house of God, to wit, the 2 pillars, and the pommels, and the chapiters which were on the top 2 pillars, and the 2 wreaths to cover the 2 pommels of the chapiters which were on the top of the pillars, and 400 pomegranates on the 2 wreaths, 2 rows of pomegranates on each wreath, to cover the 2 pommels of the chapiters which were upon the pillars. He made also bases, and lavers made he upon the bases, 1 sea and 12 oxen under it. The pots also, and the shovels, and the flesh hooks, and all their instruments did Hiram his father make to King Solomon for the house of Yahweh of bright brass. In the plain of Jordan did the king cast them, in the clay ground between Succoth and Zaradathah. Thus Solomon made all the vessels in great abundance, for the weight of the brass could not be found. And Solomon made all the vessels that were for the house of God, the golden altar also, and the tables whereon the showbread was set. Moreover, the candlesticks with their lamps, that they should burn after the manner before the oracle of pure gold. And the flowers on the lamps and the tongs made he of gold, and that perfect gold. And the snuffers, and the basins, and the spoons, and the censers of pure gold, and the entry of the house, the inner doors thereof, for the most holy place, and the doors of the house of the temple were of gold. 2 Chronicles 5. Thus all the work that Solomon made for the house of Yahweh was finished, and Solomon brought in all the things that David his father had dedicated, and the silver and the gold and all the instruments put he among the treasures of the house of God. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the chief of the fathers of the children of Israel, unto Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of Yahweh out of the city of David, which is Zion. Wherefore all the men of Israel assembled themselves unto the king in the feast which was in the 7th month. All the elders of Israel came, and the Levites took up the ark. And they brought up the ark in the tabernacle of the congregation, and all the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle. These did the priests and the Levites bring up. Also King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel that were assembled unto him before the ark sacrificed sheep and oxen, which could not be told nor numbered for multitude. Wow. And the priest brought in the ark of the covenant of Yahweh unto his place, to the oracle of the house, in the most holy place, even under the wings of the cherubims. For the cherubims spread forth their wings over the place of the ark, and the cherubims covered the ark, and the staves thereof above. And they drew at the staves of the ark, that the ends of the staves were seen from the ark before the oracle, but they were not seen without, and there it is unto this day. There was nothing in the ark save the 2 tables which Moses put therein at Horeb, when Yahweh made a covenant with the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt. And it came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, for all the priests that were present were sanctified, and did not wait by course. Also the Levites which were in the singers, all of them of Asaph, Hemam, and Jeduthun, with their sons and their brethren, being arrayed in white linen, having cymbals and psalteries and harps, stood at the east end of the altar, and with them 120 priests sounding with trumpets. And it came even to pass, as the trumpeters and singers were as one to make one sound to be heard in praising and thanking Yahweh, and when they lifted up their voice with the trumpets and cymbals and instruments of music, and praised Yahweh, saying, For he is good, for his mercy endureth forever, that then the house was filled with a cloud, even the house of Yahweh, so that the priest could not stand to minister by reason of the cloud, for the glory of Yahweh had filled the house of God. And that must have been a sight to see. 2 Chronicles 6. Then said Solomon, Yahweh hath said that he would dwell in the thick darkness, but I have built him a house of habitation for thee, and a place for thy dwelling forever. And the king turned his face and blessed the whole congregation of Israel, and all the congregation of Israel stood, and he said, Blessed be Yahweh God of Israel, who hath with his hands fulfilled that which he spake with his mouth to my father David, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people out of the land of Egypt, I chose no city among all my tribes of Israel to build a house in, that my name might be there. Neither chose I any man to be ruler over my people Israel. But I have chosen Jerusalem, that my name might be there, and I have chosen David to be over my people Israel. Now it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of Yahweh God of Israel. But Yahweh said to David my father, Forasmuch as it was in thine heart to build a house for my name, thou didst well that it was in thine heart. Notwithstanding thou shalt not build the house, but thy son which shall come forth out of thy loins, he shall build the house for my name. Yahweh therefore hath performed his word that he hath spoken. For I am risen up in the room of David my father, and I am set on the throne of Israel, as Yahweh hath promised, and have built a house for the name of Yahweh God of Israel. And in it I have put the ark, wherein is the covenant of Yahweh that he made with the children of Israel. And he stood before the altar of Yahweh in the presence of all the congregation of Israel, and spread forth his hands. For Solomon had made a brassen scaffold of 5 cubits long, and 5 cubits broad, and 3 cubits high, and had set it in the midst of the court, and upon it he stood, and kneeled down upon his knees before all the congregation of Israel, and spread forth his hand towards heaven, and said, O Yahweh, God of Israel, there is no God like thee in the heaven, nor in the earth, which keepest covenant, and showest mercy unto thy servants, that walk before thee with all their hearts. Thou which hast kept with thy servant David my father that which thou hast promised him, and spakest with thy mouth, and hast fulfilled it with thine hand, as it is this day. Now therefore, O Yahweh, God of Israel, keep with thy servant David my father that which thou hast promised him, saying, There shall not fail thee a man in my sight to sit upon the throne of Israel. Yet so that thy children take heed to their way to walk in my law, as thou hast walked before me. Now then, O Yahweh, God of Israel, let thy word be verified, which thou hast spoken unto thy servant David. But will God in very deed dwell with men on the earth? Behold, heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain thee, how much less this house which I have built? I respect therefore to the prayer of thy servant, and to his supplication, O Yahweh, my God, to hearken unto the cry and to the prayer which thy servant prayeth before thee, that thine eyes may be open upon this house day and night, upon the place whereof thou hast said that thou wouldest put thy name there, to hearken unto the prayer which thy servant prayeth toward this place. Hearken therefore unto thy supplications of thy servant, and to thy people Israel, which they shall make toward this place. Hear thou from thy dwelling place, even from heaven, and when thou hearest, forgive. If a man sin against his neighbor, and an oath be laid upon him to make him swear, and the oath come before thine altar in this house, then hear thou from heaven, and do it, and judge thy servants, by requiting the wicked, by recompensing his way upon his own head, and by justifying the righteous, by giving him according to his righteousness. And if thy people Israel be put to the worst before the enemy, because they have sinned against thee, and shall return and confess thy name, and pray and make supplication before thee in this house, Then hear thou from the heavens, and forgive the sin of thy people Israel, and bring them again into the land which thou gavest to them and to their fathers. The heaven is shut up, and there is no rain, because they have sinned against thee. Yet if they pray toward this place, and confess thy name, and turn from their sin when thou dost afflict them, then hear thou from heaven, and forgive the sin of thy servants and of thy people Israel, when thou hast taught them the good way, wherein they should walk, and send rain upon thy land which thou hast given unto thy people for an inheritance. If there be dearth in the land, if there be pestilence, if there be blasting, or mildew, locusts, or caterpillars, if their enemies besiege them in the cities of their land, whatsoever sore, whatsoever sickness there be, then what prayer, what supplication soever shall be made of any man or of all thy people Israel, when every one shall know of his own sore and his own grief, and shall spread forth his hands in this house, then hear thou from heaven thy dwelling place, and forgive, and render unto every man according unto all his ways, whose heart thou knowest, for thou only knowest the hearts of the children of men, that they may fear thee, to walk in thy ways, so long as they live in the land which thou gavest unto our fathers. Moreover, concerning the stranger which is not of thy people Israel, but is come from a far country for thy great name's sake, and thy mighty hand and thy stretched out arm, if they come and pray in this house, then hear thou from heavens, even from thy dwelling place, and do according to all that the stranger calleth to thee for, that all people of the earth may know thy name, and fear thee, and doth the people Israel, as doth the people Israel, and may know that this house which I have built is called by thy name. Thy people go out to war against their enemies by the way that thou shalt send them, and they pray unto thee toward this city which thou hast chosen, and the house which I have built for thy name. Then hear thou from the heavens their prayer and their supplication, maintain their cause. If they sin against thee, for there is no man which sinneth not. This is a very important verse. Here's another verse that we see, Paul in Romans 3:23 says, all men have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All have sinned. And then here we see the same thing in the Old Testament. There is no man which sinneth not. Interesting. And thou be angry with them, and deliver them over before their enemies, and they carry them away captives, unto a land far off or near. Yet if they bethink themselves in the land whither they are carried captive, and turn and pray unto thee in the land of their captivity, saying, we have sinned, we have done amiss, we have dealt wickedly. If they return to thee with all their heart and with all their soul in the land of their captivity, whither they have carried them captives, and pray toward their land which thou gavest unto their fathers, and toward the city which thou hast chosen, and toward the house which I have built for thy name, then hear thou from the heavens, even from thy dwelling place, their prayer and their supplications, and maintain their cause, and forgive thy people which have sinned against thee. Now, my God, let, I beseech thee, thine eyes be open, let thine ears be attent unto the prayer that is made in this place. Now therefore arise, O Yahweh God, into thy resting place, thou and the ark of thy strength. Let thy priests, O Yahweh God, be clothed with salvation. Let thy servants rejoice in goodness. O Yahweh God, turn not away thy face of thine anointed. Remember thy mercies of David thy servant. 2 Chronicles 7. Now when Solomon had made an end of praying, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of Yahweh filled the house. And the priests could not enter into the house of Yahweh, because the glory of Yahweh had filled Yahweh's house. And when all the children of Israel saw how the fire came down, and the glory of Yahweh upon the house, they bowed themselves with their faces to the ground upon the pavement, and worshipped and praised Yahweh, saying, for he is good, for his mercy endureth forever. Then the king and all the people offered sacrifices before Yahweh. And King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000 oxen, 120,000 sheep. So the king and all the people dedicated the house of God. And the priests waited on their offices, and the Levites also with the instruments of music of Yahweh, which David the king had made to praise Yahweh, because his mercy endureth forever. And David praised by their ministry. And the priests sounded trumpets before them, and all Israel stood. Moreover, Solomon hallowed the middle of the court that was before the house of Yahweh, for there he offered burnt offerings, and the fat of the peace offerings, because the brazen altar which Solomon had made was not able to receive the burnt offerings, and the meat offerings, and the fat. Also at the same time Solomon kept the feast 7 days, and all Israel with him, a very great congregation, from the entering in of Hamath unto the river of Egypt. On the 8th day that they made a solemn assembly, for they kept the dedication of the altar 7 days, and the feast 7 days. And on the 23rd day of the 7th month he sent the people away into their tents, glad and merry in heart, for the goodness that Yahweh had showed unto David and to Solomon and to Israel his people. Thus Solomon finished the house of Yahweh and the king's house, and all that came into Solomon's heart to make in the house of Yahweh in his own house he prosperously effected. And Yahweh appeared to Solomon by night and said unto him, I have heard thy prayer, and have chosen this place to myself for a house of sacrifice. If I shut up heaven that there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive them their sin and will heal their land. Now mine eyes shall be open and mine ears attent unto the prayer that is made in this place. For I have now chosen and sanctified this house, that my name may be there forever, and mine eyes and my heart shall be there perpetually. And as for thee, if thou wilt walk before me, as David thy father walked, and do according to all that I have commanded thee, and shalt observe my statutes and my judgments, then I will establish the throne of thy kingdom, according as I have covenanted with David thy father, saying, There shall not fail thee a man to be ruler in Israel. But if ye turn away and forsake my statutes and my commandments, which I have set before you, and shall go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will pluck them up by the roots out of my land, which I have given them, and this house which I have sanctified for my name will I cast out of my sight, and will make it be a proverb and a byword among all nations. And this house which is high shall be astonishment to every one that passeth by, so that he shall say, Why hath Yahweh done thus unto the land and unto this house? And it shall be answered, Because they forsook Yahweh, God of their fathers, which brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold on other gods, and worshipped them, and served them. Therefore hath he brought all this evil upon them. Wow, so this is a warning and a prophecy, as we see this be fulfilled, don't we? We know what happens throughout all the ages of the kings after Solomon, to the eventual captivity of the children of Israel into Babylon. So we see this come to pass, and it's exactly as what God stated here, because they forsook the one true living God and worship idols and basically demons and the devil. You know, Moloch and Baal and all these other things is just basically demons and the devil worship. It's sad to see that this actually comes to pass. 2 Chronicles 8. And it came to pass at the end of 20 years, wherein Solomon had built the house of Yahweh and his own house, that the cities which Hiram had restored to Solomon, Solomon built them and caused the children of Israel to dwell there. And Solomon went to Hamath Zobah and prevailed against it. And he built Tadmor in the wilderness and all the store cities which he built in Hamath. And he built Beth Horon the upper and the Beth Horon the nether, fenced cities with walls, gates, and bars. And Baalath and all the store cities that Solomon had, and all the chariot cities, and the cities of the horsemen, and all that Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem and in Lebanon, and throughout all the land of his dominion. As for all the people that were left of the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites, and the Hivites and the Jebusites, which were not of Israel, but of their children who were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel consumed not, them did Solomon make to pay tribute until this day. But of the children of Israel did Solomon make no servants for his work, but they were men of war, and chief of his captains, and captains of his chariots and horsemen. And these were the chief of King Solomon's officers, even 250 that bare rule over the people. And Solomon brought up the daughter of Pharaoh out of the city of David unto the house that he had built for her. For he said, My wife shall not dwell in the house of David king of Israel, because the places are holy whereunto the ark of Yahweh hath come. And Solomon offered burnt offerings unto Yahweh on the altar of Yahweh, which he had built before the porch, even after a certain rate every day, offering according to the commandment of Moses, on the Sabbaths, on the new moons, and on the solemn feasts, 3 times in the year, even in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of the weeks, and the feast of the tabernacles. And he appointed, according to the order of David his father, the courses of the priests to their service, and the Levites to their charges, to praise and to minister before the priest, as the duty of every day required. The porters also by their courses at every gate, for so had David the man of God commanded. They departed not from the commandment of the king unto the priests and Levites concerning any matter, or concerning the treasures. Now all the work of Solomon was prepared unto the day of the foundation of the house of Yahweh, and until it was finished, so the house of Yahweh was perfected. Then went Solomon to Ezem-geber, to Eloth, at the seaside, in the land of Edom. And Hiram sent by him the hands of his servants' ships and servants that had knowledge of the sea, and they went with the servants of Solomon to Ophir, and took thence 450 talents of gold, and brought them to King Solomon. 2 Chronicles 9. And when the queen of Sheba heard the fame of Solomon, she came to prove Solomon with hard questions at Jerusalem, with a very great company, and camels that bear spices, and gold in abundance, and precious stones. And when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart. And Solomon told her all her questions, and there was nothing hid from Solomon which he told her not. And when the queen of Sheba had seen the wisdom of Solomon, in the house that he had built, and the meat of his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel, and his cupbearers also, and their apparel, and the ascent by which he went up into the house of Yahweh, there was no more spirit in her. And she said to the king, It was a true report which I heard in mine own land of thine acts and of thy wisdom. I believed not their words until I came, and my eyes had seen it. And, behold, the one half of the greatness of thy wisdom was not told me, for thou exceedest the fame that I heard. Happy are thy men, and happy are these thy servants, which stand continually before thee, and hear thy wisdom. Blessed be Yahweh thy God, which delighteth in thee to set thee on his throne, to be king for Yahweh thy God, because thy God loved Israel, to establish them forever. Therefore made he thee king over them, to do judgment and justice. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, and of spices great abundance, and precious stones, and neither was there any such spice as the queen of Sheba gave King Solomon. And the servants also of Hiram, and the servants of Solomon, which brought gold from Ophir, brought algum trees and precious stones. The king made of the algum trees terraces in the house of Yahweh, and to the king's palace, and harps and psalteries for singers, and there were none such seen before in the land of Judah. And the king Solomon gave to the queen of Sheba all her desire whatsoever she asked, beside that which she had brought unto the king. So she turned and went away to her own land, she and her servants. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. Isn't that an interesting number? Isn't that a very interesting number right there? So what's a score, you might wonder? Well, score is 20. So 3 score would be 60, right? 666 talents of gold. Man, what an interesting number that is right there. Now, it says in the Bible that is the number of a man, 666. But I guess you could draw your own conclusions what this might mean. But it's definitely of some importance. 2 Chronicles 9:14. Beside that which the chapmen and merchants brought, and all the kings of Arabia and governors of the country brought gold and silver to Solomon. King Solomon made 200 targets of beaten gold. 600 shekels of beaten gold went to one target. 300 shekels made he of beaten gold. 300 shekels of gold went to one shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. Moreover, the king made a great throne of ivory, and overlaid it with pure gold. And there were 6 steps to the throne, with a footstool of gold, which were fastened to the throne, and stays on each side of the sitting place, and 2 lions standing by the stays. And 12 lions stood there, on the one side and on the other side upon the 6 steps. There was not like any made in any kingdom. And all the drinking vessels of King Solomon were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. It was not anything accounted in the days of Solomon. For the king's ships went to Tarshish with the servants of Hiram. Every 3 years once came the ships of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver and ivory and apes and peacocks. And King Solomon passed all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. And all the kings of the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom that God had put in his heart. And they brought every man his present, vessels of silver, vessels of gold, raiment, harness, spices, horses, and mules, a rate year by year. Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, 12,000 horsemen, whom he bestowed in the chariot cities, and with the king at Jerusalem. And he reigned over all the kings from the river even unto the land of the Philistines, and to the border of Egypt. And the king made silver in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar trees made he as the sycamore trees that are in the low plains in abundance. And they brought unto Solomon horses out of Egypt and out of all the lands. Now the rest of the acts of Solomon, first and last, are they not written in the book of Nathan the prophet, and the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo the seer against Jeroboam the son of Nebat? And Solomon reigned over all Israel 40 years. Isn't that an interesting number? I think we talked about this before, but David, his total reign as king was 40 years. And what's interesting about David is he reigned in, what city was it? Before he reigned in Jerusalem, he reigned 7 years as king. But then he came to Jerusalem and reigned 33 years. But total was 40 that he reigned as king. And here we see Solomon, his total reigning was 40 years too. It's just interesting to see these numbers continually pop up. They must have some significance and meaning. And Solomon slept with his fathers, and he was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son reigned in his stead. And sadly, we see that glory disappear right here. Right there. And then it's just a downward spiral from there on out, with a few good kings here and there. But like God prophesied, none were as wise or as wealthy or prosperous as King Solomon. So, crazy to think about. Anyway, that's going to be it for today, guys. Thanks for joining me. I hope you have a great evening, morning, noon, wherever you're at. Remember to put God first in everything you do. Have faith in Him, trust in Him, and wait upon Him. And you'll never be sorry. And God willingly, we'll see you tomorrow with more Bible reading. So, thanks and take care.